What makes you so bullish on State Bank of India? I've spoken about State Bank of India at least 4 or 5 times in this conversation. Are you not worried about, and again, I'm being a devil's advocate here. My personal view
Yep.
on State Bank of India is very bullish, but here I'm asking a question as a commentator that their return ratios are not the best in the industry. Their ROA is just about 1%. Private banks in India pretty much have better return ratios than SBI.
Mhm.
So, what
But
makes you
look,
so
I
bullish?
think, yeah, but I think if you look at the corporate side, besides ICICI, I think they're probably one of the better positions on the corporate book. But I think the question always is what is discounted in the price. So yes, that is, I agree the return ratio is not as good, but who would be able to grow earnings at mid-teens plus in a much more consistent manner, and what the market is not anticipating. I think that's where we believe the rubber meets the road in terms of the gap between what I say perception and reality. So at 8 times earnings, if you take a 5-year view and they grow earnings at let's say mid-teens plus, it becomes a fairly attractive proposition. Especially because they have a much better. I mean, there are a lot of private sector banks who have really no experience in lending to the corporates, by the way. But that was a strength for them. But could that become a weakness going forward?
Have you had a look at the Indian internet and consumer tech companies which have gone public? There's a Paytm, there is a Nykaa, there is a Zomato. These are exciting businesses. These are businesses which some would say are the future high growth businesses of this decade.
Yeah, look, we look at a lot of things, and we looked at some of the US and the European ones too, and 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 um, and if you look at the profitability expectations that these companies had, they're being they are being cut pretty aggressively. And the reason is some of these businesses have really no barriers to entry. So the growth is fine, but is this sustainable long-term growth? And one of the things we look for all the time is what are the barriers to entry? Can somebody else replicate those businesses? And at this point, there's no evidence that these are truly businesses that have any pricing power or sort of barriers which can make it difficult for others to come in. So the valuations are still on expensive side for what they're delivering. But I mean, I'm not saying people can't make money. As they say, there are 100 ways to heaven. You just need to find one. But from our cup of tea, they're just better fishes to fry in some of the other areas.
Uh, Mr. Jain, every market follows a cycle and there's always a theme which is at play. So in 2000 it was TMT, then it was infra between 2003 and 2008, then good old consumer stocks which you bought aggressively, the HULs and the Nestle's of the world. Can I say that looking at your portfolio positioning in India, you are betting on the infrastructure boom for next 3 to 5 years?
Look, I think we are pretty bullish on that because I think there are a lot of things in place because the execution under this administration has been strong, which is important here. And the second part is that we saw the similar in China in that stage of development where the infra spend actually took off in a big way almost 25 years ago. So we feel that India might be in a similar sort of setup where the earnings growth could accelerate. The problem is there are only few and far names in the infra side, right? Quality names, they're not dime a dozen. Like banks, there are a lot of names you can play. If you look at consumer staples, there are a lot of names. But infra side, there's a little bit dearth of those. I mean, the ABB Siemens are just too expensive, and people kind of gravitate toward those. But I agree that I think if I take a 5+ year view, which is what we take, none of what we do is sort of on a short-term basis. I think infra we feel is a lot better place to be. And in general, foreign investors are totally missing in that space, by the way. IT services, pharma, or especially consumer staples is kind of a what I call comfort zone.
I'll take the liberty of asking one more question. I'm shamelessly extending my appointment with you. Every investment which you do comes with an underlying risk. So for Adani Group of companies, how would you define your risk? What could go wrong which you currently are aware of, but that is something which you're factoring in? What is the risk according to you?
Well, I think as you said, there are always some risk in that. I think the risk would be if the growth slows down dramatically in some of the companies that we own because the regulatory issues that they might face on a go-forward basis. Because in regulated businesses, the biggest risk always is regulation, right? That's the positive, but that's a negative. So we don't see any signs of that yet. One of our concerns was, in terms of sort of managing growth, because these are complex projects. I think that, by the way, is sometimes not well appreciated, is that the barriers to entry in infrastructure anywhere in the world are very high, particularly in India. Execution extremely difficult. I mean, you might remember that POSCO Iron and Steel tried to acquire land for 7-8 years, couldn't even acquire land, and then they left. So greenfield projects are very, very difficult. And that's what actually we quite like it about this group, is they have shown remarkable ability to execute on greenfield projects. And I feel that they don't get full credit for that in terms of ability to pull that off.
On behalf of everyone from ET Now, thank you so very much for joining us on ET Now. And thank you for frankly answering all the questions. You've been very patient and you've been very vocal about your thought, why you've invested in the Adani Group of companies. And every time I've interacted with you, I've learned something new. And today the learning for me is always look at the long term. Don't look at the noise. If you filter it, you'll always get the bargains. Really appreciate your time, sir.
Thanks. It's great to catch up again, Nikhil.
Thank you very much.